We're getting into a conversation this hour that is a third part of conversations that we've been having over the last couple of weeks when it comes to protecting innocence. And girls, boys, children in school, unfortunately, are the prey for many a predator. And as we get into that conversation today, Davis Okombo is here. He's a children rights activist, and he joins us in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. Davis, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Not an easy conversation to have, but a necessary one to do, and we're going to do that this morning. Before we do, Dennis is going to welcome you with today's proverb. We would like to hear your interpretation of it.
Thank you.
I'm sure this is the moment you've been waiting for. Okay, so this is an easy one. So we are in West Africa, the Republic of Senegal. And there's a proverb from Senegal that goes, if someone doesn't tell you, you must find out yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Dennis. First and foremost, it's a pleasure and privilege to appear on this show. And my interpretation of this proverb is linked to the topic of this discussion today on child abuse and protection. And my understanding is that child abuse is so secretive. There is a lot of conspiracy, of silence, and many people do not want to talk about it. And children are intimidated into silence. And therefore, in the context of this proverb, we need to be so inquisitive and try to check on the red flags and get the facts and really go deeply into the issues so that we can be able to protect the child.
Well, generally staying alert and being alert about your environment.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Great.
I mean, yeah, being alert and staying alert about your environment, having a conversation yesterday. And now we get to the point whereby the slightest activity, where historically, with experience, it would be innocent. A teacher helping a student with extra work, for example. Going to see a teacher for studies or revising a question that you needed help over. Unfortunately, in the times in which we're living in, would be misconstrued and is something else that could possibly be going on. Of course, there's stories that made their way into the headlines a couple of weeks ago, but it is not the only one. From what we hear and understand, and these stories are starting to emerge, and that's what usually happens, that when something like this makes its way into the limelight, others then have an opportunity to then talk about their experiences. Sure, some people will make it through the cracks who are not genuine in their activity, but for the most part, you'll have people who then also want to share their stories. You're a children rights activist. You've seen these things. You've heard them. Are the emerging stories that we are seeing actually an image of the true situation?
Thank you very much for this question. First and foremost, I would like our viewers to understand the definition of a child, so that as we proceed with this discussion, they can keep to the facts. According to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, of which Kenya is a signatory, a child is any person below the age of 18, and I would limit my discussion to that. Now, as far as the emerging issues of child abuse, recently we had the news about Alliance Girls, which is one of the most prestigious schools in Kenya, and of course there are reports of Kaplong School in Bomet that has been closed due to a strike related to sexual harassment of children. I would like to say that this reflects the true image of the situation of child abuse and violence here in Kenya. And this is further strengthened by research that has been carried out in Kenya. The first publication was in 2009, and then in 2019 we have the reports on violence against children in Kenya, and it clearly demonstrates that more than half of boys and more than half of girls in Kenya suffered forms of violence before they attained the age of 18. Therefore, I would say that Kenya has failed children and the government has failed our children.
The research is not just numbers. There's something in that research, there's something in those findings that would make you say that. What is it?
Well, I would wish to say that the Convention on the Rights of the Child places an obligation, an international obligation on the state parties, including Kenya, that requires us to protect our children. And if you look at what is happening currently in Kenya, where schools that are supposed to be the safe places for children turn out to be the worst places where we can put our children in. We've got so many incidences of violations that even infringe on the very code of regulations of Teachers Service Commission. And these studies demonstrate at a very high level instances of child abuse. We've had cases of children being defiled and the consequences of such violence and abuse are far-reaching, with children who contemplate even a suicide. And this is really not right. And I call on Kenyans to stand in solidarity with the children and protect them.
My question is, we've just looked at the most recent examples, and you've worked in this area for a very long time, I'm sure, where we've just been talking about Kaplong Alliance girls. But when we were having this conversation sometime last week in relation to the Alliance girl story, we were getting feedback, and the people were saying, look, this is happening in Kisii in this school. This is happening in this school, in this place. And the argument then will be, is this something we've just started seeing now? Is this like a trend now? Or is this now being reported, but it's been going on for years and years? What are the numbers looking like? Paint a picture of the current situation that we have, especially in this country.
We have to look back into the history of education in Kenya back to the time of independence. And the first 3 decades of our independence were marked by gross violation of children's rights. And if you walk in our villages, you will realize that most of the teachers that were in the profession in the 1960s, in the 1970s, and in the 1980s, most of their spouses, especially their second wives, unfortunately, were their pupils. Now, this shows that there was a culture, there was a tradition after independence, which was perpetuated by patriarchy, in which male teachers preyed on girls as early as 1963, 1964, up to the 1980s. Then in the 1989, of course, there are now discussions about the rights of the children, the need to protect the child, and so on. So from that time, and with the passage of the Children Act that was amended, the Children Act of 2001, now we have the Children Act of 2022 that now guarantees the rights of children and so on. Now people are coming out, they are talking about it, but it is nothing new. Children have suffered in Kenya for a very long time. And as I said at the beginning of this show, and now I reiterate, the reports that were conducted, those studies were conducted by the government itself, not even by the civil society. And it shows that more than half of the girls and more than half of the boys in Kenya have suffered forms of violence, which includes physical, emotional, and sexual violence. Now, this demonstrates beyond any doubt that child violence, including sexual abuse, is rampant in Kenya, and we have to rise up and call it out and call on the state agents. We want to ask the PS for education, the CS for education, why are they quiet? They need to stand up and uphold the Constitution of Kenya under Article 53, which provides for the rights of children.
And we're looking at this, what has then gone from, first of all, when the stories start to come out, and this is a thing that we've heard of these stories before, but then when it comes out and things get closer home for a lot of people, then the initial shock is there. The shock is there, and then there's worry that comes after that, because then you start to ask questions about, are your children safe in school? And you talk about then at the time where it was almost considered normal that teachers would marry their former students. But now when we look at it, it's not normal. It's not normal. And then you want to ask yourself, what happened, what would have happened before? And so what was normal, even as terrible as it is for us to say it, what was normal was that this kind of behavior then happened between male teachers and female students. But now what are we seeing? That this kind of behavior is happening between male teachers and female students. It's happening between male teachers and male students. It's happening between female teachers and male students across board. And it's become more intensified. What has happened? Have we become more deviant as society? Or are the lines too lax that we've then been able to just do whatever we want?
I would like to begin by stating that there is no justification whatsoever for child sexual exploitation. However, there are quite a number of factors that significantly lead to an increase in the numbers of sexual abuse of children. Perhaps I should begin by describing that we have laws, we have policies. However, there is a lot of laxity in the enforcement of these very, very laws. For instance, Article 22 of the Teachers Service Commission Code of Regulations talks about sexual relationship between a teacher and a learner. But the weakness therein, first, is that the TSC code does not define a child. It only speaks about a learner. Secondly, the TSC code of conduct only provides that investigations are conducted where there is suspicion of sexual activity, and if a teacher is found guilty, then this person is deregistered and dismissed as a teacher, and then it ends there. But we are saying that there is need for criminal responsibility. Teachers that have sexually abused our children should undergo the due process of the law. They should be prosecuted, and we have regimes like the Sexual Offences Act that provides, clearly what needs to be done in such cases. Secondly, we have the factor of patriarchy in Kenya. Kenya is a society where men think that they are more superior and they take more aggressive roles because of how gender norms have socialized them to be. And therefore, many men want to be in control, and they use sexual violence as a way of suppressing the rights and freedoms of girls and women. Therefore, we call for gender equality. We need to treat our women and girls as equal partners together with us. We need to, walk away from our harmful cultural practices that really perpetrated sexual violence against children. Thirdly, there is the proliferation of, content in the media which exposes our children to risk of sexual exploitation. We have a lot of online sexual exploitation of children, and this is not properly regulated in Kenya, and yet DCI has one of the most developed surveillance system which they should use to go after these pedophiles who exploit our children. Therefore, I would say in conclusion that in spite of the factors that contribute to child sexual abuse, there is no justification. We cannot say that because of poverty, our children should continue to be at risk of sexual exploitation. There is no justification at all.
So in your opinion, what is the weakest link? Because there's no justification here. So we have these reports of children being abused. Reports are there. The authorities are there. There is what the Act provides for. There is what is in the code of conduct from TSC. But when a child has been abused, and we've seen many cases, they rarely make it to conviction. What do you think is the weakest link?
In my view, we have laxity in law enforcement. We have very, very elaborate and very strict laws and policies in Kenya that if we can enforce to the fullest, then children can be safe. I will give you a few examples. In the Evidence Act of Kenya, it provides that where a victim of sexual violation can go before a competent court and give an oral evidence, if the court is convinced of those submissions, then the suspect can be convicted even in the absence of material evidence. What does that mean? If a child has been defiled and this child goes before a court and the evidence convinces the court, then even in the absence of DNA results and any other material evidence, the Evidence Act gives the court the authority to convict such a person. The Sexual Offences Act itself of 2006 speaks about head teachers, and any employee in a school. That is under Article 24. It's very, very clear. Even if an offense has not led to to conviction, the law says that such a head teacher or a teacher can be convicted on the basis of the abuse of their office. Again, the Children Act and also the Penal Code is very clear on what needs to be done. And lastly, we passed the 2010 Constitution, which was promulgated in August of 2010. Article 2, sub-article 6 says that any convention or treaty to which Kenya is a signatory becomes law under this constitution. And therefore, all these conventions, the UN Rights on the Convention of the Child, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, by the Constitution of 2010 becomes law under the Constitution of Kenya. Therefore, we ask ourselves, what is wrong with the Director of Public Prosecutions? He is the person who is allowed, to initiate public prosecutions. Why are we not seeing those prosecutions? Secondly, look at what the TSC Code of Conduct provides. When a teacher is suspected to have committed a sexual offense, then the administrator of the school, that is the head teacher, initiates an investigation also through the board before it is escalated to the TSC. Now ask yourself, does the teacher or the board of management of school have the legal and technical capacity to investigate sexual offenses? Why is this investigative role left to the teacher? What if the head teacher is the suspect in this case? Who is going to initiate those investigations? And yet we know that the Constitution gives that mandate to the DCI. Why can the DCI move with their Subarus to these schools and initiate investigations and collect evidence that can sustain a conviction in a court of law?
So those are the questions that we're asking. But the thing is here is that even when you say it's left to the responsibility of teachers, head teachers, principals, whatever, to do the investigations, they're not doing them. Are they doing them? They're not doing them. That there is an element of shame that it brings to the name of a school who's been long regarded and revered in a certain manner for you to bring out something like this. And that the truth of the matter is that an adult who is seeking sexual favors, who is seeking a relationship with a child, that there is an element of deviance here. And such things are rarely addressed. But one thing that's coming out clearly from all of this, that this is happening with more intensity, and it is happening with a greater occurrence around the country. And that there are some parts where these stories never see the light of day, but that children are finishing from school, male and female, and are coming into a society where they're already debased. Mm-hmm. So how serious does it need to get before something then is done about it? Because we can see now in some cases that we've heard most recently, unless we are beating the drums very loudly, and unless people are unrelenting in their making sure that this comes out into the public, these will never see the light of day. They will be buried as far as the schools are. They will be buried under the cover of darkness. Nobody will talk about them, and the shame is the cover for any story that might come out. We're dealing with a very dangerous thing here, and then we wonder later why our society is diseased. We are letting young men and women into society that have been violated while they're supposed to be learning and are at the most vulnerable times of their lives. What really needs to be done beyond explaining this? Should we talk about it more? Should we not be shy about saying that this is happening? Should we shine the spotlight on those who are believed to be the perpetrators? I mean, I'm conflicted. And I think many are, because you're worried and you're scared. The reaction of many a parent is to remove your child from the offending school or from the offending teacher. Is that the solution?
In my view, any teacher who feels ashamed that the issues will come out in the open and so on, and therefore they want to hide it, should actually be recommended for prosecution for obstruction of justice. They become part and parcel of the perpetration of sexual abuse against children. No teacher should ever feel ashamed. If anything, the TSC Code of Conduct provides that these very, very teachers have to protect the children. Now, having said that, I think it is very, very important for all Kenyans, and thank you for this platform. We have to speak about child protection until it reaches where it matters. We want our parliament to be involved, and next week I will move under Article 119 of the Constitution to petition our parliament to amend the TSC Code of Conduct so that teachers are not just dismissed but not taken through the due process of the law. Again, allow me to state that our children are innocent. They are still young. And remember, when we are talking about this conversation, remember that there have been incidences of sexual abuse even against children in grade 2. A child in grade 2 is about the age of 8 or 7, and these children have been molested, how do you expect such a child to come out in the open? It must be the responsibility of all of us. We must speak about it. The media should be in the forefront to speak about it. We must have a monitoring system, and we need child protection guidelines in every school. For instance, if a student wants to seek guidance from a teacher, perhaps to explain a theory and so on, is it okay if this child can sit in a staff room with a male teacher without any other teacher? You know, these are guidelines that should come out very, very clearly. I would call upon Kenyans to stand up, make reports of such violations, and the police should also support the people of Kenya when such allegations are made. They should be able to carry out investigations. Lastly, there is the aspect of corruption that makes it difficult to talk about this. Because of poverty, some children that have been sexually abused remain silent. The effort to seek justice is undermined because the teachers that have been accused go back to the parents and bribe them and silence the child, and the child even is transferred to another different county, so they cannot give evidence. So these are the issues that we are saying are wrong. And Kenyans, if we want to build a generation of children that are protected well, everyone must stand up and say no to child sexual exploitation.
Yes, and it's true. I mean, looking at, the cultural changes that we've had, and looking at the communities, the cycle to break the culture of silence is not an easy one. I'm curious to find out from you, because this is an area where you've really not only researched on it, but you have actively been part of trying to advocate for the rights of children. I'm curious to find out, what do other countries do? Because we've established the weak links. We've established where we have laws, clear laws. We've established where we have, like you're saying, you're going to petition to have a change of whatever the TSC. If you're to compare Kenya to other countries, because it's also important to just mirror and just look at what are the best practices, what do other countries then do? Because we also have this culture of, if there is an offense, a child has been abused by a teacher, the first call is dismiss that teacher, step aside, at higher levels, resign. But there are no consequences, really. Resigning and stepping aside is one thing, or being on suspension is one thing. But then we don't hear much after a suspension. It doesn't lead to any investigation that would lead them to a conviction. What do other countries do?
Under international practice, as far as the Convention on the Rights of the Child is concerned, it is guided by what we call Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. And under Article 26 of this convention, it provides a principle known as pacta sunt servanda, which means that agreements must be kept. It therefore means that every treaty that is in force, the state parties must implement it in good faith. Now, all state parties to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, currently it's only United States that has not ratified this convention. It is the only convention all over the world that has achieved near universal ratification. All nations of this world look into the issues of child protection in the mirror of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. If I give you the example of the federal government of Germany, if a teacher is accused of having a sexual relationship with a child, one, this teacher is dismissed. This teacher is deregistered from the register of teachers in Germany, And thirdly, and most important, this teacher undergoes criminal prosecution so that criminal responsibility and accountability is established. In Kenya, TSC only ends to the point of dismissal, and then the teacher is free. The teacher, since they hold a Bachelor of Education, they can end up becoming MCA or even a member of parliament.
Or maybe teaching another school.
Or teaching another school, or even become a priest, continuing abusing Sunday school children. So this is very, very wrong. And it must stop. Kenyans need to stop. Secondly, there is a register which is open. Anyone can access to see the sex offenders.
Yes.
Now here in Kenya, I hear there is one, but you have to make an application. We need a register that is open for everyone. You just click a button and you see who is who.
Like you just go on Google, type on
Here we don't have it. It's hidden. Child abuse is hidden. Then all these matters are also hidden. We want it to be open.
Why is it hidden?
Well, there are issues of data protection and so on and so forth, but it is a wrong practice. We need to adopt a practice where sex offenders, we can know, even if they want to be president, we can say that this candidate is a sex offender. And you know, such people, even under international law, if you want to work, for example, in the United States and so on, they do a background check. They check whether you are a pedophile or not. But here in Kenya, we have so many people who come even from the US, Canada, and so on, who are known pedophiles in their own countries.
And run orphanages.
And they come here with a lot of money, end up, preying on girls and so on. And these are issues we are saying are very, very wrong, and we must say no at all costs.
Why is it difficult? So it seems as though when we see cases like this, or as we're hearing and they're starting to come out into the public more often, that there seems to be an allegiance that is born with the alleged offender, as opposed to an allegiance with the prey, with the child. Why is that?
Well, as I mentioned, and I also reiterate, Kenya is a patriarchal society. It's a society where women and girls, in an event of a sexual offense and so on, we are first to blame the girls and women. If our girls and women wear trousers and miniskirt and so on, and they become sexually violated, the first question people say, how did they dress? What were they doing there? And so on. So we have a culture where people think that women and girls have no rights, and they are accused. And that is why you will find in Kenya and many African societies, it's somehow acceptable that men can have different partners and so on. And if a woman does the same, then they are being accused of being immoral and so on. So we must rise and say no to cases where victims of sexual violence are re-victimized again, first in the police station, where police that are not child-friendly, start asking very unethical questions. And this is very, very wrong, causing more trauma to these women and girls. And that is one reason why people do not want to come up and speak. So I think we need to change this attitude and accept that men and women are equal. We are equal here in Kenya, and we should be treated with that respect.
Indeed. These are probably the beginnings, or I think the continuations of conversations around what should happen. I mean, it's interesting that you talk about sex offenders registry, at the same time talk about it should not end with a teacher being dismissed, but should go towards, prosecution, that to see that you would actually raise that before Parliament next week is steps that we need to be taking. But then I think beyond that also, the need for this thing to stop being shrouded in silence, because we do so much damage by not discussing these issues, by not bringing them out into the open. Davis Okombo, thank you for being here this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.